Hi, everybody. I'm Bassim Michael with Michael and Company CPAs and onlyfordentists.com. And I just wanted to take a few minutes today to go over the loan forgiveness application for the Paycheck Protection Program that was released yesterday by the SBA. This information, we've been long waiting for it. And I think it's finally nice to get some of our questions answered. Of course, the loan application forgiveness that was released yesterday is still in draft form, and it should be finalized, I believe, on May 20th. But nonetheless, I think we get some very valuable information from it. And I'm just going to go through the highlights of the things that we now know that maybe we were wondering what the answers were before. So with that, one of the things that we saw released yesterday is the SBA is going to give borrowers an option to use an alternative payroll covered period. Now, under this method, a borrower may elect to calculate eligible payroll costs using the 8-week or 56-day period that begins with the first day of their first pay period following their PPP loan disbursement date. So what does that mean? So, for example, if you received your PPP loan and it was funded on May 3rd, for payroll costs forgiveness purposes, if you could use or you could start your covered payroll period beginning on the next pay period. So if you received your loan on May 3rd, and your next payroll doesn't start, or the pay period doesn't start until May 15th, then your 56-day period can start on May 15th. So I think that gives us some clarity on that. The other thing also, they indicated that payroll costs incurred but not paid during the borrower's last pay period of the covered period is still going to be eligible for forgiveness if paid on or before the next regular payroll date. So I think from this, we do get an answer to our question, is payroll expenses going to be based on what's paid or what's incurred? And it seems like the SBA is going for incurred, meaning what's actually, what expenses actually were incurred during the 56-day or 8-week period. So, I know we had a lot of clients asking us, can we maybe prepay employees or can we fund our annual pension contribution during the 8 weeks? And I think based on what we're seeing here, they're only going to look at the actual costs incurred during the 8 weeks or 56 days. So that answers those questions. In addition, they did also provide some guidance on the eligible non-payroll costs. As you know, as far as the forgiveness is concerned, you have to at least, the amount that's going to be forgiven has to include at least 75% in payroll costs, and then the remaining 25% or less can be on eligible non-payroll costs. And those are payments of interest. And again, that's not going to include any prepayment of interest or payment of principal on loans. And of course, these loan obligations had to have been on the books before February 15th. And it does include interest paid for real or personal property. So if you have equipment loans, the interest on those loans can also qualify for forgiveness during the 8-week period. Also, covered rent obligations are going to be included in the forgiveness calculation, and that includes any business rent or lease payments that, again, are paid pursuant to a lease agreement for both real or personal property that was enforced before February 15th, 2020. And then third, covered utility payments, and they tell us that these are business payments for a service for the distribution of electricity, gas, water, transportation, telephone, or internet access for which service began before February 15th. So, and I think in the documentation section of this, which they gave us a glimpse of what documentation they're gonna require, they will wanna see your invoices for those things from pre-COVID, from February, so that they can see that it was consistent with what you're paying now during the covered period. They also answered some of our questions regarding the calculation of the FTE and the average FTE calculation. And basically they say that the average full-time equivalents will calculate the average full-time equivalency during the covered period, or if you elect to use the alternative payroll covered period for each employee, they want you to enter the average number of hours paid per week. So the full-time equivalent calculation is going to be calculated per week for all the various periods that we need to calculate this for. So, you know, my understanding is you're going to need to calculate this for the covered period. You're going to also need to calculate the FTE for the pre-COVID period, and you get to select from one of two periods, either from February 15th, 2019 to June 30th, 2019, or from January 1st, 2020 to February 29th, 2020. And then, you know, figure out which one gives you the lower denominator, and then you select that, and then the average FTE during the covered period is going to be your numerator. And with that, you're going to calculate the quotient that's going to be multiplied by, you're going to multiply the forgivable expenses by that quotient to determine the amount that's going to be forgiven. Now, what's interesting is that they defined that the full-time equivalence is going to be based on a work week of 40 hours. And check this out, they say that employers can elect to use a simplified method that assigns a 1 for employees who work 40 hours or more per week, and a 0.5 for employees who work fewer hours. And that may be interesting way to, you know, maybe if you were, most of your employees were working less than 40 hours before COVID, and maybe you don't bring everybody back, I wonder if the people that you bring back, and if they work 40 hours or more, then, you know, at that point, you know, if you use this alternative method or this simplified method to calculate FTEs, maybe you won't be dinged too much on the FTE reduction. We probably still need to get some clarity on that. Of course, the FTE reduction exemption or has some exemptions. The first thing is going to be if you, using good faith, provide a written offer to rehire your employees during the covered period or alternative payroll covered period, and then that offer is rejected by your employee, then any employee who during that covered period were fired for cause, which, you know, if they come back and they're just not performing, or they voluntarily resign, or they voluntarily request to work less hours, maybe. So in this case, or these cases, you're not going to get dinged or hurt in your FTE calculation if your employees refuse to come back or quit after they come back, or if you even fire them for good cause. So any FTE reductions in these cases do not reduce your loan forgiveness amounts. The other exception to the reduction in FTE is going to be the safe harbor rule, which I think all of us were familiar with that. And basically what the safe harbor rule says is that if an employer brings back all the employees that were furloughed between February 15th and April 26th of 2020, and then you restore the full-time equivalents and also restore their pay rates to pre-COVID levels, and if you do that by June 30th, then that's going to be considered a safe harbor for those employers. And again, they're not going to see a reduction. So in order for that to happen, you have to restore both the full-time equivalent count and the pay of these employees to pre-February 15th levels by June 30th of 2020. So I hope that this information is going to help you answer some of your questions. And I look forward for additional guidance from the SBA. We expect there's going to be probably more guidance coming up in the next few days. But I think this answers a lot of the main questions that we had prior to this. With this, have a great weekend and stay safe and healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.